Hi there, it's August the 16th, and today we are continuing our journey in the book of Nehemiah, and we're reading chapters 11 and the first part of chapter 12 down to verse 26. Now, it was mentioned earlier in the book of Nehemiah that Jerusalem was somewhat underpopulated, and this is why Nehemiah undertook a census of the whole people of Israel to see where people were living and how the population was spread. And at the beginning of chapter 11, the decision is taken that there will be a tithe of the people, not a tithe in terms of goods and fruits of the earth, but actually in terms of the physical people themselves. So a tenth of the people would come to live in Jerusalem to repopulate the city, having been so underpopulated. Now, first of all, it seems that there were numbers of people who volunteered for this and who voluntarily gave themselves, but then there were also lots taken for people to come and live in Jerusalem. We know that the heads of the people came, and we know that many of the priests and Levites came because obviously they were serving the temple, so they would be living there, but others were called to come and live to bring life into the city and to bring hope into the city again. And so chapter 11 is particularly a long list of those who came to live in the city and to live in Jerusalem, and it's finished up then by an overview of how people were spread out through the villages and through the towns of Judah and Benjamin, kind of a gazetteer, an overview of the state. Then in chapter 12 we are told about the various Levites and priests, the lines of Levites and priests, how they served in the temple. It starts off actually with the Levites and priests who came back with Zerubbabel back to Jerusalem in the first swathe of returnees, and then it goes on to tell us about others. Interestingly, one of those mentioned later on in chapter 11 is Yaddua. Now, there was a Yaddua, a high priest, who welcomed Alexander the Great into Jerusalem when Alexander the Great conquered, but that was actually 100 years after we're talking about here. A few scholars suggest that perhaps Yaddua was a baby at this time, and he's mentioned because he became high priest and had to be included and was in the high priest line. It's unlikely, but it's just interesting that Yaddua's name is also linked with later events that go beyond the scriptures. And so there's a clear overview then given in chapters 11 and 12 of the whole setup of the nation as we go on in the latter part of chapter 12 and towards the end of the book to look at the dedication of the walls, which will be the next thing that we do. God leads his people where he wants them. God places his people where he wants them. He calls them to where he wants them. What a privilege it would have been to have been called to be some of those who were founding and living in this renewed city of Jerusalem, this renewed place of God's presence. We're blessed today that we are not tied to a geographical location, we're not tied to a particular building, but we as the temple of God carry this presence of God, carry the Spirit of God wherever we go. In that sense, we are the priests, we are the ones who are standing for God in the world and standing with God for the world as we bring in Jesus' name the worship that he calls us to today. Let's go and be that living temple in the world today. Have a very good August the 16th.